Keanu Reeves has a net worth of around $308 million. He takes the subway. That is not a colorful anecdote. It is a data point. And once you understand what this man has actually lived through, not the curated version, not the internet's favorite human mythology, but the actual sequence of events, the subway makes complete sense. Because the man who sits down next to strangers and asks about their days is not performing humility. He is someone for whom loss arrives so early, and so repeatedly, that simplicity became the only rational response to survival. This is not a story about fame. It is a story about what happens when someone absorbs an almost incomprehensible amount of grief and keeps moving anyway. Not dramatically, not loudly, but with a steadiness that only makes sense when you understand where it came from. Keanu Charles Reeves was born on September 2, 1964, in Beirut, Lebanon. His name means cool breeze over the mountains. He has spent 61 years being anything but sheltered from what the mountains can bring down. His father was gone by the time Keanu was 2 years old. Not gone in a way that offered any kind of narrative closure, just absent. The kind of absence that has no ceremony, no explanation a child can use, no chapter end. He saw his father one more time, at 13. That meeting resolved nothing. It answered nothing. And then the gap resumed and stayed. What a child does with that kind of arithmetic, father appears once in a decade, then never again, is not something that disappears when the child grows up. It reorganizes. It becomes the lens. His mother worked hard and kept them moving. Beirut to Sydney. Sydney to New York. New York to Toronto. 4 cities before most children have learned to stop missing the last one. Each relocation brought new schools, new routines, and eventually new stepfathers, relationships that came in and then ended, in a rhythm consistent enough that impermanence stopped feeling like a disruption. It became the baseline. People arrived. Then they left. That was just what life did. He attended 4 different high schools across 5 years. Dyslexia made the classroom an exercise in sustained difficulty that most of his teachers read as attitude. At one point he was expelled, not for violence, not for anything particularly transgressive, but for the particular exhaustion of a child who had already been asked to adapt too many times and had run out of cooperative energy. The system logged it as behavioral. The reality was more complicated. What worked, what actually gave him structure, was hockey. As a goalkeeper at the Toronto rink, he earned the nickname The Wall. And that name mattered, because in that role there was clarity. There was a position to hold, a purpose that was concrete, and an identity that had nothing to do with which city he was currently living in. There were serious conversations about the Ontario Hockey League. A real future, defined and visible, and his. And then at 15, a knee injury ended it.
No gradual transition.
No alternative plan already waiting. Just another thing that arrived and then was taken, before it had time to fully grow. By the time he loaded a battered Volvo with his belongings and drove to Los Angeles in his early 20s, the pattern of his life was already well established. Things would form. Then they would dissolve. He did not know yet how many more times that would happen. He could not have. The early years in Hollywood followed the familiar rhythm. He took work where he could find it, small Canadian television roles, a Coca-Cola commercial, a children's program where his particular combination of genuine awkwardness and warmth translated well on screen. Casting agents did not know what category to place him in. That uncertainty, for a while, looked like failure. Then came River's Edge, a dark independent film in which Keanu played a teenager confronting a moral weight no teenager should carry. Critics who expected nothing found something they could not dismiss. The grief in his eyes was not technique. It was material. It was the actual accumulated cost of his actual life, visible to anyone willing to look. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure changed his public profile almost overnight. The film connected with audiences broadly, and his character became a recognizable fixture in the cultural landscape. But that visibility carried a structural consequence. The industry began to see him through a single frame. Roles came in that reflected that frame. The range of what was offered narrowed. And in a decision that studio logic could not fully process, he declined the sequel to Speed, a project that would have extended his commercial momentum significantly and paid him accordingly. That choice did not expand his opportunities in the short term. It limited them. He made it anyway. That is not the behavior of someone managing their career with conventional calculation. That is someone operating by a different set of priorities, one shaped long before Hollywood had any opinion about them. But the career story, for all its texture, is not the thing that explains who he is. The thing that explains who he is happened in 1999. By the late 90s, Keanu Reeves had reached something that resembled stability for the first time. The Matrix was positioned to change everything commercially. His band, Dogstar, was active. And in 1998, at an event connected to the band, he met Jennifer Syme. The relationship developed quietly, without the usual machinery of public romance. She was not embedded in Hollywood's infrastructure. What formed between them was something that felt genuinely separate from all of that. For someone who had spent most of his life watching things dissolve, it must have felt like a different kind of gravity. By 1999, Jennifer was pregnant. Plans formed. A space was created for what was coming. And on December 19, 1999, their daughter, Ava Archer Syme Reeves, was born still. 8 months along. Everything that had been imagined collapsed in a single moment that could not be processed, could not be reversed, and could not be contained in any language that comes close to adequate. Grief does not move in the same direction for two people. It diverges. It creates distance precisely when closeness is most needed. Keanu and Jennifer separated, though the connection between them did not cleanly end. Then, in April of 2001, Jennifer Syme died in a car accident. She was 29 years old. The loss folded directly into the previous loss, not replacing it but extending it, layering absence onto absence in a way that left no clean edge to grieve against. At her funeral, Keanu Reeves was present. That is the complete statement. The moment required nothing more, and he offered nothing more. Public attention existed around it. It could not touch the actual interior of what was happening. The year 2001 also marked something else. While The Matrix had made him one of the most recognizable actors on Earth, while the world was watching him bend reality and redefine what action cinema could look like, his sister Kim was fighting leukemia. Leukemia. That word did not appear in any interview from that period. It did not surface in any press tour, any promotional appearance, any profile piece in any magazine. He simply did not say it. That word was not accidental in its absence. It was chosen, or rather, not chosen, by someone who had decided, clearly and early, exactly what was private and what was not. And what was private was anything that actually mattered. He secured a home near Los Angeles so that distance from Kim would never be the reason he wasn't there. Filming schedules were arranged around hospital visits. Roles that would have expanded his visibility were declined without public explanation. Time that the industry would have called momentum was redirected, quietly and without announcement, toward a hospital room where his sister was fighting to survive. The choices were not framed as sacrifices. They were not framed at all. They were simply made. Kim Reeves went into remission. When that happened, there was no press release. No media appearance marking the end of that chapter. What followed instead was a charitable foundation, funded by Keanu and operated without prominent personal branding, directed toward cancer research and toward hospitals treating patients and families in situations identical to the one he had just lived inside for years. He did not attach his name to it in a way designed to generate recognition. The money moved. The work continued. The public largely did not know. If you have ever watched someone perform generosity, the announcement, the photograph, the careful placement in a news cycle, then you understand precisely how different this is. Absence of performance is not absence of action. In his case, it is the opposite. The quieter the gesture, the larger the actual cost. There was also River Phoenix. Before Jennifer Syme. Before Ava. Before Kim's diagnosis. Before all of it. They met during the filming of My Own Private Idaho, and what formed between them was built on a specific kind of recognition. Two people who had experienced early instability, who carried emotional awareness born from pressure, who understood each other's internal rhythms without requiring explanation. River brought intensity. Keanu brought steadiness. The balance between them was not calculated. It was just real. On October 31, 1993, River Phoenix collapsed outside a nightclub in Los Angeles. He was 23 years old. He was dead within hours. The event was sudden and public and entirely final. Keanu Reeves did not respond with statements. He responded with silence. Those close to him observed a withdrawal that was not dramatic but was deeply present. Silence as its own form of loyalty. Silence as the only language adequate to something that cannot be adequately said. And then came the physical accounting, because his body has been keeping a separate record of everything this life has asked of him. For The Matrix, He trained in martial arts until he finished sessions trembling, barely functional, drenched through. The wire work was not comfortable. A spinal injury severe enough that doctors raised the possibility of paralysis required surgery, fused vertebrae, a neck brace, and before the healing was complete, he was back in training. For John Wick, he trained with live ammunition until his fingers blistered. Judo and jiu-jitsu until his knees became a detailed record of every demand he had made on them over decades. Fight choreography of a precision that left his knuckles swollen for weeks at a time. During the filming of Good Fortune, a knee gave way. He described the sound as a potato chip breaking. He was 61. He kept filming. He showed up in the brace. He did the therapy. He did not complain about it publicly. That is not stoicism as performance. That is someone for whom the bar for what constitutes a reason to stop has been set by things far heavier than a knee. He drives a 1995 Porsche 911. He rides a Harley-Davidson. He lives in a home in the hills, chosen for its quiet. No fleet, no compound, no personal brand architecture built to extend the revenue stream of being Keanu Reeves. When he shared Matrix profits with the stunt and special effects teams, because he had decided they deserved a larger portion of what the film had generated, he did not announce it. Other people told that story later. When he sits next to strangers on the subway and asks them about their days, no cameras are rolling. He is simply there, in the ordinary world, the way he has always been. His relationship with artist Alexandra Grant, which became visible to the public in 2019, has the quality of something built rather than launched.
No spectacle. No manufactured moment.
Two people who share values, share creative work, and appear to have chosen each other with the kind of deliberateness that only comes from having paid close attention to what loss actually costs. The person the internet decided to call Hollywood's nicest man has buried a daughter, has watched his closest friend die at 23, has sat in hospital rooms for years while his sister fought to survive, has lost a partner, has had his body surgically reassembled more than once, has given away money and time and presence without requiring any of it to be witnessed, has chosen, repeatedly and at real cost, the thing that felt true over the thing that was strategically obvious. The cool breeze over the mountains. That is what his name means. And what you realize, when you lay the actual chronology of his life flat and look at it without the mythology, is that the calm was never passive. It was earned. Specifically, and at enormous cost, and without once asking for credit. The person who seemed to survive on luck and good nature was actually always the one doing the most deliberate work, in the quietest rooms, for the longest stretches of time, when no one was watching. So here is what this story leaves you with. When someone absorbs that much loss and becomes more open rather than more closed, more generous rather than more guarded, what does that tell you about the choices available to all of us after we've been hurt? And does knowing what was happening behind the scenes change how you understand every public appearance he ever made, every interview, every premiere, every performance, during the years when none of this was visible? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. For more interesting stories like this, be sure to click on the next video that pops up on your screen. You never know what you'll discover next.